On the Record is brought to you by PSE&G, committed to serving customers, strengthening the business community, and investing in New Jersey's future. PSE&G, we make things work for you.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of On the Record. The world today is dramatically different than it was just a generation ago. Parents and children are bombarded with images and distractions that were unheard of 30 years ago. The lure of illicit drugs continues to plague the U.S., and today there's a new generation of drug users and a new generation of drugs. Unfortunately, the typical user is younger, and the drugs these days are stronger, more addictive, and apparently quite easy to find. Even in affluent suburban areas, heroin is back and now is almost as accessible as alcohol. In June, NJN News aired a four-part news series called Kids and Drugs, A New Generation. Producer-photographer Tim Stollery and reporter Zachary Fink have expanded the series for this week's edition of On the Record.
Sussex County, the rural northern tip of New Jersey, may be the last place you would expect to find a heroin problem. But here in Lafayette, on a spring evening, more than 200 people gather at Sunrise House, a monastery-turned-residential drug treatment center. They are here for a program called Project Alert, Is Someone Marketing Heroin to Our Kids? The event targets parents of middle and elementary school children. The news is not good.
Top story was about kids and heroin, was it not? Anybody read this? The Hanover teen likely died of heroin at the age of 16. I've been watching the development and progression of the world of addiction for 25 years. I will say to you very clearly tonight, I'm frightened.
Frightened by what some in the treatment community are already calling a new drug epidemic. 11 and 12-year-olds using alcohol, inhalants, and marijuana. As they get older, they move on to harder drugs like ecstasy, cocaine, and even heroin.
But the heroin available to teenagers today is a far cry from what junkies were shooting years ago. It's stronger, cheaper, and easier to find.
It's easier to get heroin and other drugs than it is to get alcohol. You don't get carded to buy dope.
The Colombian drug cartels decided that they weren't making enough money and they needed a larger market. And so they decided to create a way where their drug, heroin, would be marketable and appealing to suburban and rural youth. And the way to do that is to not have to use needles anymore, so make it very powerful, so very pure, so that you don't have to use needles, you can just snort it.
This is one bag of heroin, which is marked with a brand name, which in this area sells between $15 and $20 each.
There's tremendous competition in the heroin market. There's various groups that represent different source areas, different ethnic trafficking organizations, etc. So each is competing for their share of the market. The way you win in that competition is by selling a higher purity product at a lower price.
A recent national study found the purity level of heroin purchased by undercover DEA agents had in fact tripled over the last 10 years. As the strength of the drug climbed, the price actually dropped, creating new customers, new markets.
And now dealers have seized the opportunity to mix heroin, pure, cheap, and plentiful, with other drugs like ecstasy and marijuana.
The first time I used drugs was in 7th grade.
This 16-year-old Sussex County girl was hooked on heroin and didn't even know it.
Well, my drug of choice was ecstasy. I didn't know really what it was. And later I found out that it was cut with either coke or heroin or rat poison or whatever else they wanted to cut it with. The principal at my school suspected that I was using drugs, and he gave me a urine test, and I thought I would have been fine, but it came back with a large amount of heroin in it.
It's a small rural county where people feel there isn't a problem. It's very bucolic. We have dairy farms and apple orchards, and so driving through it doesn't appear as if we would have urban problems in this rural setting. For us in Sussex County, heroin is a much bigger problem than it was well, not even 3-4 years ago.
A bigger problem, and not just in Sussex County. Most families today have working parents, leaving teens unsupervised after school. And some baby boomer parents tolerate alcohol and marijuana because of their own experiences in the 60s and 70s.
Many parents who grew up in the 70s say pot is okay, a little marijuana is okay. They don't realize how the powerful nature of the THC in pot has changed over the years, and now that it could be laced with heroin is absolutely frightening.
If you get a pill with heroin in it, you might get sick from it or, whatever, but after a while you'll get a taste for the heroin. Your body will start getting used to it. So in a sense, you're actually doing heroin, and a lot of people don't even know that. And that's the same with smoking weed. They have mediocre, weed, not good quality, and a dealer will sprinkle it with heroin and sell it to some kid not knowing, and they'll think it's the best weed they've ever had in their life.
And treatment experts point out that alcohol and drug use are gaining acceptance among a wider group of students.
It's not only the burnouts, it's not only the kids who are known substance users, but it's honor roll students, it's the captain of the football team, it's kids who are in the drama club. It's very, very pervasive. So it's difficult to kind of put a label and say, well, this is the profile of a substance abuser. It's throughout all the school system.
Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a heroin addict. Is he male or female? Old or young? Black or white? What's he feel? Where does he live?
We think it's very important that the parents of young children, elementary and middle school kids, have their eyes wide open and talk to their kids. And we want the parents of those kids to be aware ahead of time so that they know that there's things that they should look for physically in their kids, as well as change in grades, change in friends. So many signs that they can look for and say, you know what, there might be a problem here. And we want them to have the courage to make that phone call and see if there really is a problem. It's very hard to accept that your kid might be doing a drug.
I stopped playing all sports, and I pretty much just hung out with the people that I knew I could get high with. All I was concerned about was getting high. I had to have my drugs all the time. I couldn't go out with my friends and have fun not being high.
Go home tonight, grab a hold of your kids, put your arms around them, and just don't let go. If you let go, the Candyman's out there and he's waiting. And he's here, and he's alive and well, and he's in Sussex County, and he's gonna get you.
What I usually like to point out is if we look around the room and say, I'm sure we can pick out those kids who are addicted to drugs, whether it be heroin.
At this Morris County program, prosecutor John Dangler challenges audience members to spot drug-addicted teens sitting among them.
If you look around, they must stick right out. They must look something about them, because they surely don't look like my son or daughter. And so can I ask the teens that are here tonight to help me out with the drug program to please come forward?
It's called Family to Family. In conjunction with Daytop, the state's only residential treatment facility just for teens, kids who are in recovery, along with a parent, tell stories only they can tell.
I think I was in 6th or 7th grade. I was 13. The first drug I ever did, I smoked weed for the first time. It was I was hanging out with all the older kids, and then I started drinking and stuff like that. And then it progressed to acid and cocaine.
How long did it take you from this introduction of marijuana at that early age to progress to using heroin?
Probably a year and a half.
How did you hide the use of 6 bags of heroin a day from your teachers, from your friends, from your mother?
Well, it got to the point where 6 bags a day would just make me be normal, just like everybody else. I didn't look high or anything like that. So, and most of the time I really didn't come home, or in school I did my work and stuff like that. So they never had no suspicion.
If your mother had not found out about your drug problem, where would you be today?
I'd probably be dead.
Dead from heroin. Just like 45 other Morris County residents, many in their teens or 20s who OD'd in the last 2.5 years. Before Dangler became prosecutor, drug overdose deaths were not made public. He changed that and started Family to Family to reach teens and parents with the critical message that drug addiction and death can strike any family.
Rather than have somebody come out and lecture on what they know to be the problem, or their studies or research, let's let real young teens, real moms and dads come out from each of our communities and tell their story, how it starts, how it progresses, what the parents did right, what they did wrong.
I got to the point where I was stealing people's food when they set it down.
just taking it and running off with it and eating it. You know, I had no respect for myself. I had no dignity. And it just seemed like everything was piling up on me towards the end, and I had a few episodes one of which I tried to kill myself.
Jeff's mom, Nancy, described the night she finally got him home.
But that night, because he didn't have his drugs, he had a psychiatric episode. He literally flipped out and was trying to kill himself, banging his head against the wall. And the last I saw my son in his worst was being strapped down, put in like a straitjacket type thing with his legs strapped down, and they were taking him away. And he was just screaming and yelling, "Help me, help me, I hate myself, I hate myself."
If we had cancer spreading throughout our community and our young people were coming down with it, and we were fearful that our son or daughter was next, you would see such an outcry from the parents and everyone else to learn and do everything they can to get on top of this. And drugs are really a cancer. They take time to creep into an individual's lifestyle, and before we know it, we've got a seriously addicted teenager who is really loose and can't control himself.
How prevalent is heroin use among teenagers, people this age, kids from the suburbs, kids from rural areas?
As far as in suburbia, it's running pretty rampant. Everybody like basically I know has tried it, or I guarantee everybody knows someone who's tried it.
Joe Hennon, who runs Daytop, calls the reemergence of heroin and other drugs nothing short of an epidemic.
We have 70 beds in our Mendham facility, and they're always filled with about a 4 or 5 month waiting list. It's the most heart-wrenching thing is when kids call up and parents call up and say, "Please, my kid is dying, can't you do something?" No, I can't. It's filled.
Heart-wrenching, like the story this dad tells of finding his 16-year-old son's lifeless body one day before Mother's Day.
I tried to revive my son, but he was already gone. He was taken care of by God, so that he didn't have to do anything else. Anything else that these boys and girls had to do maybe in their illness, or what your boy or girl might have to do if, God forbid, they get this illness.
A new generation, new drugs. They're called inhalants, many as near as your kitchen, garage, or supermarket shelf. Teens call it huffing, inhaling common chemicals, getting high.
I've used glue, I've used propane, gasoline, whippets, which is nitrous oxide, rush, paint thinner, nail polish remover, name it, I've done it.
There was never any consequences. That's what led me into doing inhalants in the first place, that there wasn't a consequence. They were real easy to get a hold of. If I did get caught with them, there was a simple excuse to get out of it.
Easy to get a hold of and potentially deadly. One of the most popular, teens call it hippie crack. Nitrous oxide, a gas used normally to get whipped cream flowing from the can, but misused by these teenagers at a recent Meadowlands concert.
Let me ask you if you remember when you were a kid. When I was a kid, we used to love to turn in a circle real fast. Then we would laugh and we would giggle, that kind of a thing. Inhalants do something of the same thing, only it's chemical.
What? Upstairs.
Joe Hennon runs Daytop, an adolescent drug treatment center. He says many of the patients he treats began with inhalants.
25 to 30% of our kids here, they used inhalants. It's a cheap way, it's an easy way of getting a sensation in the body that kids really like. And kids never think in terms of danger.
And the next step for many teenagers is more serious drugs like cocaine and heroin.
I didn't think it would lead me to other drugs. It was used in tandem with my pot smoking and alcohol. I rationalized it saying, well, it's not that bad. It's not going to at least I'm not doing coke and whatnot. But, eventually, all in all my drugs, doing inhalants, smoking weed and drinking, all led to me using harder drugs.
It tastes really bad, but I was liking the feeling that I got from it, you know what I'm saying? The feeling of like blankness and like your head not know where you are, like kind of pass out for a few seconds.
What may inspire a young person to inhale a potentially deadly gas remains a question.
Boredom. That's what it was for me. After school, we didn't do anything else. Our lives basically revolved around weed and alcohol. When we didn't have that, we just say, well, unhook the propane tank from the grill and take it back in the woods.
My brother died from inhaling Glade air freshener.
Katie Comiskey's brother EJ was 13 when he died in May of 1997. He was a 7th grader at Wall Township Intermediate School. Last August, 14-year-old Wade Sipley of East Brunswick died after huffing with a friend. And more recently, 5 high school juniors died in a car crash in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. The county medical examiner said traces of a chemical used to clean computers were found in the girls' bodies. A spent can of the chemical was found in the back of the car.
Inhalants are more dangerous than your marijuana or cocaine or even heroin. It is equivalent to what angel dust used to be before. It actually destroys the brain cells.
Inhalant abuse may not be easy to spot, but some of the symptoms parents can look for include red or runny eyes or nose, chemical odor on the breath, slurred or disoriented speech, dizzy appearance, and a rash or sores around the mouth.
They think because it's not illegal, it's safe, and you can get it right at home. You don't have to risk doing that terrible thing of having to drink where mom or dad are going to catch you.
Like alcohol, if someone's drunk, you can see them stumbling around or, even high or whatever. But with this, because it's so short, there's no evidence of it.
Inhalant abuse has risen sharply since 1991. In that year, 380,000 adolescents admitted to using inhalants. In 1996, that number jumped to over 800,000. And by the time they exit high school, 1 out of every 5 adolescents has used an inhalant to get high.
I know that my brother did not think he was going to die that afternoon. I know that he did not think that he was going to die.
If you need more information about inhalant abuse, call the national hotline at 1-800-269-4237 or visit the website at www.inhalants.org. Graduation. This spring, 107,000 New Jersey 5th and 6th graders are graduating from the National Drug Abuse Prevention Program called DARE.
I mean, I'm from, I guess what you'd call a pretty affluent area.
Travis and Jeff are DARE grads. It didn't work for them.
No, I kind of took it as like a joke, It was like, I remember thinking back now, 5th grade, it was just like the DARE, I guess there was a DARE day in school. It was like just a day to not go to class, I guess. But now it's like, now that I know more about the drugs and stuff like that, I could probably, participate in it for like positive reasons. But last time it was just kind of like a joke. These cops don't know what they're talking about.
I think when we got done, I don't remember, we might have got a sticker or something, or a shirt or something. So I remember being in it kind of for the shirt, not really for any information I was getting out of it. It's not like if I'm about to take a drink or a drug and I'm a little kid, I'm going to think, okay, well, officer, he said, say no, just say no. Or officer said, okay, no thanks, I get high on life, What kid's going to say that?
DARE taught me about drugs and how we can abuse and misuse them.
But DARE proponents say that for every DARE grad who gets hooked on drugs, there are more who don't, and that DARE is the way to start a dialogue.
The DARE program is supposed to work as a triangle effect to begin with. It's the police, teachers, and parents. So we're just one part of it. So we would hope that the parents would take responsibility and teach the children after we get done with the program in 5th grade.
But that's where some of the criticism comes in. DARE's core curriculum is aimed at 5th and 6th graders. Depending on money and resources, some towns do follow-up in 8th grade and in high school, but most do not.
And it concerns me because I feel that 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th grades, they can get into a lot of trouble by then. What about when they're 11, 12, 13, 14, 15? I mean, those are the years I think they start becoming a little bit more independent.
You can't have a child take a pledge or sign a paper or say, I'm just going to say no to drugs and think that's all you have to do. They have to learn skills. Drug prevention programs have to be skill-based. They have to learn how to say no, when to say no, how to walk away from a difficult situation.
While the debate over DARE will continue, one point of agreement among experts is that they're also fighting a force as powerful as the drugs themselves. It's called denial.
I began to suspect, but when I asked him and he looked at me with tears in his eyes, this was the same boy that when he was 6 or 7 would come up the hallway and say to me, Mom, I took an extra candy. So there was a level of trust there, and of course there was the mother's heart that wanted to believe that her son couldn't possibly do this because we had discussed it, we had known the dangers of it. So no, on some level I did not want to see it.
At this Morris County drug prevention program called Family to Family, parents and kids hear firsthand stories from those who have seen it all.
He went to school every day. He worked. He had a curfew. He was involved in sports, and I thought he was the best.
The denial is very, very strong, and it can take weeks, it can take months of one-on-one contact in a counseling situation to actually convince a parent that there might be a problem. They don't want to see it. It will be too disruptive in their life. Imagine if both parents work, you have limited money, and your insurance might not cover the treatment. What are you going to do if your kid really does have a problem?
Marijuana.
Oh, this.
But experts say the anti-drug message needs to get through before there's a problem. Apparently, parents need to get the message as much as the kids. A national study reports that 98% of parents in America claim they've spoken to their children about drugs, but only 27% of kids say they're learning about it at home. And while just 14% of parents say it's possible their teen may have used marijuana, 42% of kids say they have.
What are we missing in prevention? We're missing the parents. 90% of our prevention programs are aimed at the kids. They're aimed at the wrong people. Adolescent substance abuse is a parental problem more than it is an adolescent problem. And until our parents end up becoming very knowledgeable what is out there, what kids are experimenting with, how they can see the signs of it, how they can talk to their kids about drugs. Until that happens, the adolescents are going to continue pushing against the limits.
Have parents in some cases abdicated their responsibility as parents to teachers and dare officers like yourself?
I've found that to be true, that the parents, if something does happen, the parents don't believe that it was their child that did it. They feel that the teachers and the police should take care of their children instead of them taking the responsibility of doing it themselves.
And while some parents don't want to believe their children use drugs, the kids we spoke to all agreed that it was never too difficult to hide their addiction.
The signs and symptoms of drug use aren't the same anymore. I could come home and be totally high on a drug that, wouldn't make my pupils big, I wouldn't slur my speech, and I got so good at making myself sober for that 5 minutes that I had to talk to my parents that they would never know. I'd walk into my room, shut my door, and be as high as I was before I walked in my house.
Do adults really even have a clue what's going on here, suburban adults?
I don't really think so, because like most, my parents were like sort of aware of it, but not, they didn't think anything of heroin. They just thought of like, maybe he's drinking, maybe he smoked pot a couple times. And that's how most other people's parents were too. We'd be all like high on heroin and stuff like that, and they would just think that we were tired. That's all we said, we're tired, They didn't think anything of it.
My mom always thought, because she grew up in the 60s, grew up around it, that she knew what she was looking for, and she's out there looking for the red glassy eyes. She doesn't know. She's not going to know what's going on if my pupils are pinned, and she's not going to know what that's all about, or if I'm nodding, if I'm falling asleep or something.
But the news is not all bad. According to a study by the Partnership for a Drug-Free New Jersey, children whose parents began the drug discussion before 6th grade were 57% less likely to use pot or cocaine than kids whose parents waited until the 7th or 8th grade.
Why start so young with exposing them to what this is?
I don't want them to get caught out there. This is the best time to start teaching kids about drugs and alcohol. This is when they're the most impressionable.
Your friends can't talk you into doing something you really don't want to.
Next.
Or can they?
I'm out of here.
And the New Jersey study also found that middle schoolers who frequently saw anti-drug PSAs like these were less likely to start using.
Just try and feel good about yourself. Be secure about yourself, and within yourself, and you don't have to go searching somewhere else for happiness. You don't have to get happiness, trying to go to the extremes that I went to. I tried every chemical, every substance, but the happiness I feel now is from within myself.
What the government needs to do is focus more on informing the parents on what to look for, and showing kids real life stories of like what can happen to you when you use drugs and how much it'll mess up your life.
Communicate with your kid, because whether or not it was around when they were younger, it's around now. And they can't be old and live in their own little world of work and come home and watch TV. You can't do that. You got to know what's going on with your kid.
That was an expanded version of the NJN News series Kids and Drugs, A New Generation. The overriding message Tim Stollery and Zach Fink heard in preparing this project is that parents must talk to their kids about drugs and alcohol early and often. If your kids are teens or adolescents, get involved in their lives, know their friends, and don't be afraid to call their friends' parents to emphasize your involvement. If your child has gone through the DARE program, don't use it as an excuse not to open a discussion, but instead use it as a starting point to have frequent discussions. The more the better. And remember, it's never too early to initiate this ongoing dialogue. If you're interested in learning more, the web address for the Partnership for a Drug-Free America is www.drugfreeamerica.org. And every New Jersey county and many communities have drug and alcohol awareness programs that offer guidance and support. Be educated and be informed. It's the biggest favor you'll ever do for your children. Thanks for watching. I'm Michael Aaron.